Martin Scorsese, in the movie he won an Oscar for, Best Picture at least, this is The Departed. This movie is a movie tour de force starring Matt Damon, Leonardo DiCaprio, etc., etc. Let's talk about why I think this movie is great. It's a very strange movie in a lot of ways, but a very compelling one coming up next. There's a lot to love about The Departed. There's some things to dislike, perhaps dislike intensely. Martin Scorsese here makes, in a way, a remake of the movie Infernal Affairs. And I don't want to give too much away in this video, but there are some minor spoilers, and this might be one, so go watch the movie if you have not. The Matt Damon character is working for a mobster played by Jack Nicholson. They're in Boston circa the year 2000 or so. There's a Leonardo DiCaprio character at the same time coming into police academy as the Matt Damon character, and he's going to go undercover, in fact deep undercover, to become the henchman for the Jack Nicholson character. So you have a police officer, and a good one and an honest one, becoming a deceiver in order to rat out or get evidence for the mobster, while the Matt Damon character is a plant by the mob in the police department. In a way, this is a basic Trading Places movie. This is a Prince and the Pauper type movie where you have two equal characters, or two similar characters of age, and they switch ranks altogether, and we see what the difference is, or what happens to them when they become different people. And here for Scorsese, I think this is a morality play, and a very heavy one, in which the bad guy, so-called, becomes a good guy in disguise, the Matt Damon character, and then the good guy, but not really, the Leonardo DiCaprio character, goes undercover to do a whole bunch of bad deeds for the mob, but he, of course, is working for the police department. And one of the cat and mouse games here with any sort of Trading Places movies like this is, are they going to find each other out? Who's going to find out who first? The DiCaprio character, William Corrigan, is very troubled, and he's gone into the depths of hell, more or less. A Dante-like hell, if you remember Dante's comedy. At the bottom of his hell, or inferno, you don't have murder, you have fraud. In fact, the bottom levels of hell are all fraud. It's a twisting of the truth, a complete dishonesty, which is socially distorting and sort of is a rot, a filth, a disease among society. That's one of Dante's interpretations of fraud, which, along with pride, are the nastiest of sins. And here you have fraud writ large. In fact, it's discussed openly, especially with the character of the therapist, played by Vera Famiglia, about whether we should be truthful or not in our daily lives, honest. Can we be honest with each other? Can we be honest with ourselves? Are we self-deceived? And these characters, especially the William Corrigan character, does he know who he is? Does he have an identity? And he wants his identity back throughout part of this movie, which is to be a regular guy, but of course he's undercover and being, playing a part. He's acting this entire time. And the double life is impossible to live, especially with the threat of his possible death or being found out and being killed by the mob. William Corrigan has descended into hell here with the Jack Nicholson character. One of the problems of this movie, people don't like the Nicholson performance. One, his accent is off. Two, he's hamming it up quite a bit, and you can imagine Robert De Niro in his role, a classic, Scorsese actor. He could have worked perhaps better here. I actually like Jack Nicholson a lot, and I like him in this role because he really gets the psychopathic, horrific, murderous. The guy who wants to kill people but does it in an organized way. He really gets that down, and he's playing a character who, has a voiceover narration at the beginning, articulating some so-called American values.
I don't want to be a product of my environment. I want my environment to be a product of me. If I got one thing against the black chappies, it's this. No one gives it to you. You have to take it.
He talks about, bootstrapping, doing everything yourself. He talks about, not relying on anybody and, taking things in society, because that's all society is, people taking things from other people. And that is the ethos of the mob, and that is what, Leonardo DiCaprio is going into. The question is that the whole of society, even the police force to some extent? In other words, Scorsese has once again Catholicized another movie. Now, he didn't quite do that with the movie Silence, made several years after The Departed, because that was already, in a way, a Catholic story. but with Mean Streets, with Goodfellas, and a number of other famous movies he made. Raging Bull has a few Catholic icons in it. See my video on that. He brings up the idea of the church. Who are you tied to as a person? Well, here in the movie, American society, at this time, there's no church, there's no family. What's your identity? Where does it come from? It comes from being part of a group, which is either here the police or the mob. And then behind that is the state, both Beacon Hill, representing the Massachusetts state government. The Matt Damon character has an apartment just across the way, always staring at the golden dome of the state capitol. And then behind that, the federal government looms in this movie, but I won't say how. The dilemma then for an American like William Corrigan, classic American question: who are you? What's your identity? Where did you get your identity from? Are you just a deceiver and a deceived person? Is that all you can be in this society? And then, of course, you add in the themes of law and order and justice, and maybe the law needs to disguise itself as evil in order to do good. That's a moral conundrum as well that Scorsese just loves, and here it's maybe his best effort at showcasing that. It's a complicated movie, but a good person becoming a bad person, can he get out of being a bad person? And a bad person pretending to be a good person, what's that like? Both of those scenarios are cross-cut, intercut together wonderfully in this movie. And I think Scorsese is probably here at his best, intercutting both characters' stories and story arcs. It's really extremely well done. In fact, some complicated things like having a flashback to a character's past while intercutting the other character's present. You need to watch how this is structured and edited. If you're going to be an editor, or if you like video editing, go study this movie, especially like the first hour of it, because how do they tell the story to a mass audience? It's a very complicated story, and a lot of deception and not knowing who's whom and who believes what. But they sort it all out here pretty well, and I just really am admiring the way the story is put together as a very complex narrative. This is a movie with a lot of moviness. I feel like the characters make some choices and decisions that are implausible, to say the least. And there are a couple of scenes I think are over the top ridiculous. It may be for you, Jack Nicholson's acting. To me, it's one of the sex scenes in the movie that I think is totally needless. And there are a couple of scenes like that where I think, okay, this is more of a movie than a realistic work. And yet, by the end of the movie, I am completely involved and moved by what happens, say, in the last 10 to 20 minutes. I find that all of the twists and turns and who I'm rooting for and why are brought to the fore, and it's a strong, emotional ending that really nails home the fact that these characters are in a society filled with fraud. That may be what American society is, at least in the late 20th and 21st century in general. One of Scorsese's big criticisms of, like saying Goodfellas, total society of fraud, or in King of Comedy, where you want to be somebody that you can't be, and yet you try to perpetuate that anyway. I mean, all of those things come up here. And so is America a giant society of greed and fraud and murder? It's a brutal question Scorsese is asking, but it's in your face, it's honest, and I kind of like that. The film is not for squeamish people. In fact, I wish some of the ugliness was cut out of it, but again, Scorsese is trying to be honest. But just so you know, there's heavy violence. There's a lot of language people consider foul in the movie, but really it's the violence that's really disturbing, and especially the ending, which is gut-wrenching. In the end, I don't know who these people are. I think the Matt Damon character, not much of a spoiler here, he doesn't know who he is. He's not even a person. You almost have an NPC, a non-playing character, a man who doesn't know who he is, has no allegiances, has no friendships, has no relationships. He's made all these choices that result in nothingness. And you see, actually, all this deception and self-deception is the road to utter nothingness. And nothingness meaning annihilating everything. And that's where the ending comes into the movie, where there's nothing left for the Matt Damon character. And I hate to say, I know a few of these people who seem to think everybody's a tool to get what they want. There's no relationship that's not about, I'm benefiting myself. And this character really embodies a lot of nastiness that I've personally seen, and I bet a few of you have seen as well. One more mention, if you like this movie, I've not seen Infernal Affairs. I'm told it's quite good. But also, this movie is sort of riffing on Philip K. Dick's A Scanner Darkly, in which, not much of a spoiler alert, an undercover agent goes undercover investigating himself, but he doesn't know he's investigating himself. That's a story, and I suggest reading the book, but there's a movie by Richard Linklater, and it's very similar. It has some similar ideas to this. A lot of paranoia, a lot of uncertainty about identity, and then linking that to church and national themes in America in particular. Did The Departed deserve an Oscar? I don't know. I don't care, but this probably is one of my 5 favorite Scorsese movies. Not because I think it's completely great, awe-inspiring, universal art that's going to transcend the ages and they're going to watch it 500 years from now, but I find it to be very watchable, rewatchable, studyable, and sort of combining a lot of Scorsese interests as well as his aesthetics together in ways that he didn't really do as well in other movies besides, say, Goodfellas or maybe Mean Streets. So for those reasons, I really, really like this movie, and I like mostly the performances in it. What do you think of The Departed? I'm very curious to hear what people say about it now, 10 to 15 years later. How does this watch to you? What do you think about its ideas, its portrayals? Do you disagree with it? I mean, all those kinds of questions come up. So let us know in the comments. Please subscribe to my channel for more great content. Thank you. Have a great day.